Hey there, I am Alan Gratz, the author of Refugee, which is the 2018 winner of the Judy Lopez Memorial Award. I really appreciate you guys giving me and Refugee this award, and I'm very, very sorry that I can't be there to accept it in person. I never turn down a visit to California unless I have to, and this year I had to because I was already long ago booked for that date. So again, my apologies for not being able to join you guys, but I was hoping that I could just at least record a short video here to say thank you, and also to tell you a little bit more about where the idea for Refugee came from. So Refugee began for me with the story of the MS St. Louis. It was a real ship, of course. It left Nazi Germany in 1939 with more than 900 Jewish refugees on board. Many of them had already been in concentration camps. They were released. They were told to get out of town. They bought the first ticket that they could, and for many of them, that was the St. Louis. St. Louis was bound for Cuba, which, as you know from reading the book, was turned away. The ship was turned away from Cuba. It was turned away from the United States. It was turned away from Canada. They ended up coming back to Europe just in time for World War II, and many of them ended up back in concentration camps where most of them died. And none of those refugees had to die if somebody somewhere said, "We got this. We'll take you in. We'll give you refuge." The MS St. Louis is a very famous story. There have been books written about it, and movies and plays. There's musicals. There's even an opera about the MS St. Louis. But there wasn't a book for young readers. So I thought, I will write this book. Well, I was just trying to figure out my way into the story, like who my main character would be, what the plot would be on board the ship. I was kind of working through all this when my family and I took a vacation down to Florida. And we stayed in the Florida Keys. We got up one morning and we said, hey, let's go for a walk on the beach. And we found a raft that morning, a raft that someone had used to come to the United States overnight. It was made of plywood and 2x4s. It had that stuff you get out of a can, that great stuff, that spray insulation, was filling. They used it to fill the whole bottom of the raft to seal the cracks, to keep the seawater out. They'd taken an old engine from like a motorcycle or a tractor or something and bolted it inside to use for a propeller. There were empty bottles of water and wet clothes and half-eaten bags of candy in the floor of it. Nobody was on board the raft when we found it. To this day, I don't know what happened to the people who were on board it to begin with. I hope they made it here safely. I've never known. I also don't know where they came from. My best guess has always been that they came from Cuba. But that's 90 miles away across the sea, right? It's still the closest Caribbean country to southern Florida, but it's still 90 miles away. I wouldn't have wanted to go fishing in this thing, and somebody had taken it at least that far to come to the United States. And my family and I, when we saw it, we were stunned. We walked around it, we talked about it. It made us think about all the things that we took for granted, the food on our tables, the roof over our heads, the freedom and safety we enjoy as American citizens, and how somebody had put their lives on the line to have what we have, to have what we take for granted every day. And me personally, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I writing a book about refugees 75 years ago when we've got refugees right here, right now, like 100 yards away from where I was sleeping last night? Why am I not telling that story? Well, of course, at the same time, the news was full of reports from the Syrian civil war and the Syrian refugee crisis that it has spawned. The Syrian civil war has been going on since 2011, and since that time, more than 11 million Syrian people have lost their homes. That's a huge number. That's more people than live in Los Angeles, right? So imagine that over the last 7-8 years, every single person in Los Angeles lost their home and became homeless and had to find somewhere else to live. That's the kind of refugee crisis we're talking about in the Middle East right now, and it's spilling over into countries next door to Syria, like Jordan and into Turkey. But many more, as we know, are pushing on to the European Union, trying to find safety and refuge there. But that's very dangerous too. To do that, you have to cross the Mediterranean Sea on one of these black rubber rafts that are sold to you by a ticket on board one of those is sold to you by a smuggler. It's very dangerous. In 2016 alone, more than 3,000 people died trying to make that crossing. And none of them had to die if somebody somewhere said, we got this. We'll take you in. We'll give you refuge. So I'm watching all this and I'm like, okay, First, I wanted to write a book about Jewish refugees on board the MS St. Louis. Then I wanted to write a book about Cuban refugees on board a raft. Now I wanted to write a book about Syrian refugees trying to escape this conflict in the Middle East. I was like, which of these books do I write first? They're all really important stories. I was like, wait a minute, why do I have to write 3 different books? What if I wrote one book and I combined all 3 stories in it? And that became The Story of Refugee, the book that you read, and the book that so many millions of young readers across the country and across the world now are reading. I've just been really thrilled and overwhelmed by the response to it, particularly in the world that we live in the America that we live in right now, to have so many people embrace this book, to have so many people talk about it, to have you guys single it out as award-worthy means so much to me. I put my heart and my soul into this book, and I hope that it changes hearts and minds. And I know that you guys giving it this award will bring it even more attention and hopefully win more hearts and minds for us. So thank you again for this amazing award. I'm very sorry not to be there in person to accept it, but thank you again, and enjoy the Southern California weather. I'm sure I will be somewhere a lot colder when you guys watch this. Thanks.